like you're like really old and like okay, not old, like okay, like being around for long and being around for long and like respectful. That's what he was trying to get.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Being around for long is another word. So, oh, no, it's fine. It's okay.
Hey guys, this is Ashley Kang of Horizon Esports, and I'm joined by Jankos of G2.
Hello.
Hello. In Christmas festivity.
Yeah, I'm flexing with my Christmas sweater today. I mean, I think it fits well, so it fits the December theme.
Yeah. Thank you once again for making time for this interview. And as we can tell from the shirt, 2020 is closing to its end, and we're gonna have a Christmas soon, and soon after that, All-Stars and maybe a spring split not soon after. So how have you been spending the off season?
Well, I think this year, for the first time, when the season ended after our lose to Damwon during Worlds, I felt kind of like I still want to play. Like last year, for example, we got really burnt out throughout the season, but this year we took it slightly easier. And I still think we did everything we could have to win Worlds, but you know, in the end, we didn't do it. And the day we came back from the hotel after the semifinals, we felt like we still want to wake up the next day and still want to play. So after coming back home to Poland, after you know everything kind of ended, and after watching the finals as well, that one against
Suning,
yes. I started streaming, and the patch came out, which made the season, I mean, like a preseason more interesting because all the items change and there's so many champion changes. So, I mean, I've been just grinding League of Legends for like the past month, pretty much streaming every day. So I don't have like a big of a vacation right now. But then again, I'm enjoying the game a lot because there's new items. And when you think about it, every time there is a big change in game, there is a chance we can win Worlds again, because let's say Damwon was the best at the meta that was at Worlds, but now the meta will change.
Yeah.
So maybe they will not be the best at the meta next year. So you know we have to grind and try to. I mean, the grind pretty much starts again, right? And the goal is to win 2021.
Like, speaking briefly about the preseason changes, I know that everyone's talking about top lane. Oh my god, like the Sunfire Aegis is busted. Malphite is like so OP right now. But I noticed in jungle, you know, it still seems to be a bit of a carry jungle meta. You know, I still see a lot of Graves as well as, you know, literally I saw Rek'Sai now and then. What do you think about the overall state of the jungle at the preseason?
I think at first people were trying a lot of champions, even in high elo. I saw with some Queen jungle, I saw a lot of Amumu being played. I saw other tanks, I saw other carries, but probably from the strongest meta champions, I think the champions that were played at Worlds are pretty much, you know, still the strongest. For example, Graves, Lilia, Hecarim are very strong. Kindred is still being played somewhere. That can change with time because Riot is still balancing it out, and we don't really know what's gonna be the best. But as long as there is no that much catch-up experience in the jungle, I think tanks will not be like highly valued because you just fall behind at some point. As long as the game is kind of slow and you play for objectives, then I think maybe the tanks can like carry the mid-game team fights. But at some point you will just get 2-3 levels behind the Graves, right? And he will have way more impact in team fights. So I think that most likely the carry meta will stay unless Riot wants to do something about it. I don't personally mind. I have a lot of fun playing Graves, Nidalee. I'm trying some Elise, but it's for sure definitely a worse champion than, you know, Lilia is, for example. But since there's new items and there's new things to explore, then I'm having a lot of fun in the jungle right now. And it's still, of course, one of the strongest roles, especially in solo queue, and you get fed pretty much every game, so it's very fun to play.
Speaking of junglers, and also you mentioned Damwon earlier, I saw that you changed your IGN and your icon. Sorry, can I hear? I really wanted to hear more about it. What made you?
Okay, so the icon, I was just, you know, enjoying my day, and I woke up and I did some exercises, you know, to be healthy, and then I drank my green tea, and then I just sat down on my PC, turned on League of Legends, turned on the stream, and then a quest popped up, and the quest was basically play a game. no matter which game you play, no matter if you win or lose, just play a game, and you get a golden Damwon icon to celebrate their world victory. So I felt like I didn't really have an option, and normally after losing worlds, I try to cut off from league. This year I didn't really. I still played, and normally I don't really like to think a lot about worlds and how I lost and stuff for the next couple of weeks, and I leave it for January. But again, I mean, I was just enjoying my solo queue games, and then the Damwon icon popped up, and celebrate Damwon's victory at Worlds. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess we will celebrate. So that's why I changed the icon to fight my fears, so to speak. To be a better version of yourself, you have to face challenges, and you have to face what you are not comfortable with, and you have to grow. From your defeats. So since we got defeated against Damwon, I'm trying to grow here, and I just have their icon to remind me of my defeat in 2020. And also G2 budget Canyon comes from me trying to be a better carry jungler. That Canyon is, for example, he's super insanely good at all the carries, and he had multiple rank 1s in Korea, but he also had rank 2 in Chinese super server, where I mean, rank 1 was I think 2000 LP, so it was so much grind. But if he had more time, probably he could have been rank 1 in Chinese Super Server as well. So he's an inspiration, even though he's very, very young compared to me. So yeah, I'm just a budget Canyon. I'm a cheaper version of Canyon, basically.
Oh no. Okay, thank you for giving us some updates on what you have been What?
No, don't go.
Why are you laughing?
Not at all. I'm just saying
that. I didn't say anything. I'm just thank you for giving me an update, and you just start laughing.
I mean, I don't really mind, because I feel there is a high chance we will get to play Damwon next year, and they were super hungry, and they really wanted to play us throughout the whole year. And I think they became a super solid team with strong fundamentals. Now there will be some changes in the team as Nuguri left. But I mean, I'm still pretty excited to play against them next year, right? Be it the Messiah or any other tournament.
Okay. And, as you mentioned, Damwon Gaming made a change with Nuguri exiting Damwon Gaming. So it was announced that he's going to LPL. We don't know which team yet. But G2 also recently had some shift in roster changes. I guess you got a lot of questions about this roster change by Reckless joining G2. Did you get to interact with Reckless that much since he has joined, and what were your initial impressions about this roster change?
Well, I think that G2 always wants to stay on top and wants to compete for not only the European Championship, but also for Worlds. Multiple years in a row, we haven't been successful enough to win, but we have been to 2 semifinals, I think, and 1 final. And I mean, the goal is still the same, right? Is to win Worlds, and we want the best players possible to do so. And we just felt if Perix leaves the team, then Reckless is the best suitable option for us, because he is of course super skilled, super talented. He also brings a lot of experience, so there is no worries about him being unfit for international events or him being unfit for playoffs, because he been around since I was around, even before me. So he has so much experience already. And the only thing we have to work on is probably our communication and how we act as a team and what's our priorities. But that's something you can easily fix in scrims. We actually played 2 days of scrims so far, the previous 2 days before the interview, and today we have the 3rd day. So I think the communication is really good, and I think Martin is very, very positive in game. Then again, normally when there is roster change for the first couple of days when you start practicing, no matter how the scrims go, it's like a honeymoon. It's kind of like a new pair of lovers just spending time with each other and just being everything is perfect and life is so cool. So we will have to go through difficult times together as well. And I think the difficult times is what shapes the team and what shapes the roster. So until we start losing in LAC, which hopefully we will, a little bit at least, and maybe lose a couple of games in playoffs, we will see how we react to losses and how we deal with losses as a team. But I think so far it has been pleasure playing with Martin, and he's really good again. He brings a lot of values to the team, so I'm pretty hopeful for the next season, and I think for sure we can win both European splits, spring and summer, and then for MSI at Worlds, we will of course try our best. And yeah, I really hope we get to play Damwon again. I just want to play Damwon.
That's so funny because I remember throughout this year, Damwon players were saying again and again that they really want to face G2, but G2 players didn't even, some of them didn't even remember the semifinals, and now this narrative has to be shifted around. I'm not saying that in a bad way, I'm just like observing. Sorry.
Oh no, it's definitely, I mean, we were thinking about playing against FPX the whole year, right? Because I mean, you always want to look up to the team that did beat you.
Yeah.
So for us, it was all about beating FPX. And in 2019, before Worlds, we always wanted to play against IG because IG was the team that did beat us in 2018. We did get to play IG during MSI group stage where we went 0-2. And then we were supposed to face them in the final, but somehow Team Liquid did beat them. And then during Worlds, we didn't get the chance to play against them, and then we lost to FPX, and then we wanted to beat FPX, and then we didn't really have a chance to play against FPX as they didn't make it to Worlds. So now it's Damwon. Now we want to play Damwon because they are the team that did beat us, so they are the team that has to face a rough in 2021.
Do you think you would have had a good chance of winning the championship this time if you beat Damwon at the semifinals? Out of curiosity.
I mean, they were the best team at Worlds, right? Beating against Suning in the final, and playing scrims against the LPL teams felt, because in 2019 when we faced FPX in scrims and IG, we were getting absolutely dumpstered. Starting from around quarterfinals, like in the group stage, it was kind of even, but when we started practicing for Damwon and SKT. During quarter and semifinals, we were getting absolutely dumpstered by IG and FPX. And compared to this year, where it started up like crazy bad, and during the group stage and early Worlds, when we didn't really get to play on stage yet, I think we were losing like 80% of the scrims against Asian teams. But then by the end of Worlds, we were actually winning a lot against Suning and against TES. Like we actually had a positive track, I think. Every day we were winning like at least half of the games. So I was really hopeful because, LPL was like for 2 years in a row, they were like the biggest threat. But we knew Damwon is a very strong team, and then in the end we were not good enough of a team to beat Damwon. But I think if we were to face TES or Suning, I mean, we could take it, even though against Suning we lost in groups 1-2, and against TES we never got to actually play on stage. But I think we could have taken it for sure, right? But then again, if you are better team than Damwon and they are so good, then they are probably the best team in the world, right? So this year was Damwon's year, and we will see what the future brings.
Jankos, we did quite a few post-match interviews throughout this year, and those are really good ones, and we got to hear a lot of insights about what you think about the game, what you think about the state of the game, like the different leagues, the competition and stuff. But I never actually really got to ask you some more holistic questions about your career, and is it okay if I explore them in a way?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh my god, now I said. I remember asking this questions to so many different pro players, and they always give me different answer for different reason. And Jankos, like before this interview, we just joked about how you're called Jankos the Old in Korea, but it's a sign of respect because you've been it's a sign of respect because you've been around in the scene for so many years, and you've been to a variety of worlds. What was your most memorable worlds, if I may ask?
I think when it comes to the most memorable worlds, it was definitely 2016 actually, because it was my first worlds after 3 years of trying to reach that stage in my career. I finally succeeded in a different team than Rocket. It was in H2K. And I got my first bootcamp in Korea, which was another level of competition where I finally was able to face Asian players and Asian teams. And back then, Korean teams were like still the strongest. So playing against them was like a huge privilege. And also, it was my first time in Seoul in Korea, and I fell in love with like Korean food back then because it was so good. So that was my first time trying a lot of Korean food. And throughout years, because a lot of teams got like Korean import players, everyone would go for Korean barbecue, and I didn't really understand this culture. Why would every team in Europe and in NA would go like for Korean barbecue as a food? But it's like a very social thing to do because you can talk so much, and it's very. I just feel like it's a nice way. I love Korean barbecue as well right now, and the food was really great, and the bootcamp was super cool, and I got to see some parts of Seoul, and I got to see how like the Korean teams are practicing, how good they are, and then we went to NA for Worlds, and I always wanted to go to America because of the movies I watched as a child. So that was like a dream come true kind of, and it opened my eyes of how important it is for a pro player to reach that stage of Worlds because nothing really matters except being there. I feel like Worlds are like just the highest level of competition, and since it was my first time, like everything that I experienced was so great and so cool. And then from competition point of view, I think all the Worlds are were very memorable. I think compared to the usual season where you are in a gaming house and you are practicing and you have like pretty much the same time as you eat food, and then you practice, and then you like spend some time as a team, and then you practice again. So everything is very repetitive, and you do the same thing every day. But when you go to a boot camp, you experience so many new things, and it's like a breath. It's just like a breath of fresh air, and you get to play against different teams. You get to experience different metas. Instead of spending time in the same place, you can go outside to eat in new restaurants as the food is not provided. So you actually have to go out as a team. You eat together all the time. So I just really like that time of the year where you have to prepare for Worlds. And I think the tournament itself is, of course, very fun as well because, again, you get to play against the best teams. And normally the audience is way bigger, right, except for this year. And you get to, like, maybe sometimes leave Europe, sometimes don't, depends where the Worlds are, but you get to travel, which I like. But yeah, probably 2016 and then 2019 when it comes to the competition, being in the final for the first time was super memorable as well.
I remember talking to Hans Sama at Rogue right after Oregon unfortunately didn't make it further from group stages, and he says that every time that he attends Worlds, he just feels like he's grown so much as a player. And I just get that from so many different players, and I think it differs by player, but some players, once they've been to Worlds, they say to the extreme that, hey, the regular season doesn't matter. It's like, it's Worlds that I'm playing for. Do you ever got that feeling that Worlds seems to be that one focal goal that all the players are going for?
I mean, I think Worlds are the ultimate goal, but I also believe that if you are not competing to be the best in your region, how can you be the best at Worlds? Of course, it happened multiple times where not the first seed won the Worlds in the end, right?
Samsung.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely happened in the past, but I feel like being the best in your region and going with like a lot of confidence into Worlds can help. So for us, definitely the Worlds is the ultimate goal. And if you win Worlds, it really doesn't matter if you are always third place and you never won anything in your region. Like, you are actually the best team in the world. That's it. And being the best team in the world is so much better than being the best team in Europe, in Korea, or in China, or in NA. But at this point, if you are the best team in Korea or China, you're probably the best team in the world as well. But I think, yes, like the ultimate goal is always to win Worlds. But for me, the competition in my region also matters. And throughout the season, I don't think about Worlds that much. I just focus on the next thing, on the next step. And when the spring split starts in January, I will 100% focus on the next Friday and Saturday, where we play the next games, and I'll think only about winning the next games. And then when playoffs starts, I will focus on playoffs, on quarters, on semis, on finals. And then the goal is to get the European trophy. Then the goal is to win MSI. Then the goal is to win summer split. I take it like very, very step by step, and I don't really think too much about like the most futuristic thing you can, like Worlds, because for me it's equally as important to win everything domestically first. Because in the first year of my career, excuse me, in the first year of my career, I was like, I couldn't win anything. So right now when I joined G2, I can win so much. So I'm having so much fun. So I just want to win.
Because like you shifted a few different teams, and many people were still quoting you as like one of the best junglers in Europe. So in 2019, G2 started winning like MSI, they went to finals. Even though Fnatic went to finals in 2018, this G2 was considered the most dominating team that Europe has ever created. So in a way, Jankos, you as a person went higher than ever in your career in 2019. Did you also consider 2019 as a big shift in your career, or was it just another stepping competition for you in your memory?
I mean, honestly, right now, of course, I think about it as a big success, but I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds cool. But
Okay.
in daily life, I really don't think about MSI. I feel
Okay.
like Worlds is what really matters. So MSI is like a really huge trophy and like a, kind of stepping stone to be good at Worlds and to taste the competition, because MSI and Worlds are like the only times of the year where you can play against other teams than the domestic teams, and then Rift rivals, but Europe always gets to play an A, which I don't think is very useful. So that's why I feel like, MSI and Worlds are all that matters. But even some people on my stream sometimes remind me that I won MSI, because I always say I didn't really win anything important. But then they're like, wait, you won MSI. But like, it is really cool, and yeah, especially when you put it like that, it's super cool. But and we did beat the SKT 3-2, so that's also cool because I got to play against Faker twice that year, and I did beat Faker twice, and Faker was like the big guy for me. I was always kind of Faker, so, and I still am, by the way. So I definitely am proud of us achieving MSI and us being such a strong team in 2019 and us being like respected all around the world. But yeah, Worlds in the end, we didn't really win. And for me, it's just about the competition and just about like the next tournament where I can win stuff. So I don't really think about it much. And in 10 years, when I am probably retired and I have maybe like a child or something, I will tell them that, back in the day, Papa was actually like good, at the game and stuff. When my son will be like beating me in like any games. But until then, yeah, I just want to focus on the next thing that's ahead of me.
Which is not even next Worlds, but just your next game, next
just
game.
Spring Split, yes,
Yeah,
next
just
game.
Spring Split. Because do you think there is, out of curiosity, a difference in trait in players who end up playing for a very long time and keep their competition for many, many years?
I mean, I think it depends. I think there's a lot of players that maybe they don't have long careers because they just either get complacent with themselves and they don't try to push themselves anymore, or maybe they are satisfied with the way of life of pro players and they're just having fun and, of course, getting paid a lot. But the players that really wanna win, it's slightly different in Asia and in Europe, because I feel like in Asia a lot of teams are burning themselves out and playing like over 12 hours a day every day to be on the highest level they can be, and then their careers are relatively short because they just burn out fast. I feel like in G2, for example, we don't really play that much. I mean, of course, Caps probably plays the most out of everyone else, but still we can drag him out of his PC and watch a movie together, or go out to the cinema, maybe go at a restaurant. That is being fairly difficult this year, but we could have done that, or maybe we can watch a movie, or maybe they play cards in the big room. And I feel like as long as, I mean, it really matters what happens in the end and winning Worlds and all, but the road is what's like the most fun, and you really have to enjoy the road for like that one moment of glory. So yeah, I don't think I really answered the question, by the way, but
no, because you said it's the journey that matters, not the goal, maybe.
Kind of, yeah.
Because like this season has been so strange, like so many players retiring for multiple different reasons. Some players feel like their time is up. Some players feel like they have other opportunities such as coaching or maybe casting. If this is not a difficult question, and I'm asking with a lot of consideration, when what would make you think maybe you should retire, Jankos, if I may ask?
I think for me, when I like ever made a decision to, whenever I make a decision to retire, it's basically between, do I still want to compete to be the best? If not, do I still want to compete to have like an income, or do I prefer to do something else in life, right? So for now, I compete because I want to be the best. And if I wanted to sign for another team, I don't think G2 would have like any problem selling me, and I could still like compete elsewhere, maybe for like a higher salary, but I would not have a shot at winning worlds, and I would probably just be around, well, worse players at least. But you know, this far in my career, I was always going up in competition, and I was always trying to like reach the new heights of competing on the highest level. And I think I succeeded, and I think my career overall improved throughout the years. And yeah, I think the next question, or like the next time I ask myself, or if I get tired of competition, I'm like, okay, I don't want to compete on the highest level anymore. It's taking a toll on me. I'm burnt out. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm too bad, or I can't be good enough, or I stop trusting myself, right? If you stop trusting yourself that you can beat Canyon or whoever, then most likely that's it for you as well, right? Because if you don't trust yourself, then how can you compete on the highest level? And yeah, if I ask myself, do I wanna, okay, I'm done with competition. Do I still wanna stick around and get a paycheck, or do I just want to retire? And then if I answer myself that, okay, yeah, I still want to get paycheck for 2 years. I want to have some fun now, and I will focus on other stuff, but I will still compete, and I will try to be as good as I can domestically, but I'll probably not compete in the best teams. And then afterwards is probably retirement, right? So for now, again, 2021 for me is all about competition, all about being the best, same as previous years. And then heading into 2022, I will probably have to make my decision if I want to still, compete. Of course, that being said, is assuming I still get to play in G2, assuming they are not like, oh, okay, Jankos not good enough, we want to pick someone else, right? Because then the choice is not made by you. If I have the luxury of making my own choice, then I will. If I don't have that luxury and the team decides to just kick me out for like whoever else, that's also fine, right? That just means I didn't succeed. But I would like in the future, I don't know exactly when, in the future, I would like to become a professional streamer, and that's my goal for like retirement after being in competitive. But I don't know how long will it take to reach that like state. Because right now I just want to be Damwon.
Oh my god. What? If you could choose between winning worlds and beating Damwon, what would you do?
Okay. I mean, I think
okay, it's just because you mentioned beating Damwon about 4 times in this interview, I just had to bring it to that question.
Okay, I think winning worlds, but I feel like beating Damwon could mean the same thing. At least this year, beating Damwon would probably mean winning worlds.
Yeah.
Next year, if you ask me that question next year, and let's say Damwon didn't make it to Worlds somehow, which I think they will, then I'll probably choose winning Worlds, right? Because again, like Worlds are like the most important thing. But yeah. I have trust that they will make it, and we'll meet somewhere in the semis or quarters again.
Okay, we'll look forward to some interesting hype-up video before that semifinal or quarterfinal. Thank you for this conversation, Jankos. One last question. What kind of pro player do you want to be seen, or do you want to be remembered as in now, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Well, I am hoping that people will remember me when I retire as like, I suppose, someone whom always wanted to like compete on the highest level and didn't really care much for, yeah, like the money or fame or anything. I always wanted to win. And then I also hope they remember me as someone whom could have guided some of the like younger talent through even my streams or through me, like even my interviews, like anything I do as a person, I hope will help the younger generations to be better themselves as humans, but also as players. So yeah, you could say that I would like to be like a grandpa who was like guiding the young generation towards like the higher goals, like things maybe he couldn't reach himself. And then, you know, when I retire or whatever I do after, I hope that they will still keep supporting me because, you know, hopefully I am a kind personality that will still have like a lot of fun in whatever I do. So when I start actually professional streaming and I just have fun on my streams, then hopefully people will still like come around and say hello, even though I won't be like as relevant when it comes to pro playing anymore.
What's like a one thing you would like to do other than winning worlds in your career? Out of curiosity, because you've done pretty much everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to beat Faker, but
you
that
did it
happened
twice.
already. Yeah, but that happened. Like, that was like always my goal, right? To beat Faker, and that happened. You know, like we won against them in 2019 against SKT, and I feel like that was something that was like a huge like step, like milestone for me as well. And then for right now, I actually don't know. I don't have anything that would really satisfy me except for winning worlds, I suppose. I mean, like winning another MSI title would be great. Winning another, you know, domestic title, that is all goals to look forward to. But like the highest, the biggest goal of them all is always winning worlds, and that's the ultimate goal of probably every pro player's career. So I don't think there's anything that can equal that one, and I don't think I have anything in mind except for just beating Damwon and winning worlds.
Maybe eating Faker ice cream.
Yeah, that one as well. But yeah, I heard that it's not available, right, anymore.
Like I went to the supermarket and I think they discontinued it. I was really sad myself.
Oh my god. Yeah. So yeah, if Faker ice cream is not available anymore, then
you just have to be fake. You just have to be Faker now. The second best thing. Okay, thank you so much for this interview, Jankos. Really appreciate the conversation and best of luck. Really best of luck for 2021.
Thank you very much as well. I appreciate the interview, and well, thanks to all the fans for supporting G2 and me, I suppose, throughout the year. And we will see what the next year brings.